Bridge. Hopefully that process is moving forward. You probably know the environmentalists beat DOT Act on the Monroe bypass and were able to stop that project. We're extremely hopeful that that's not the case on the Organ Bridge. The contract has already been let. It's a design-build contract, and we're just waiting now. I think the end of the summer is when we're going to hear that, when that case is going to be heard and decide if we can move forward. If in fact we can move forward, we'll probably see pilings going in the ground by early next year. So keep our fingers crossed and hope that that project continues to move forward. Another bridge, I got some of my Currituck friends here. The Mid-Currituck Bridge, again, is moving forward. Again, that's a process. It's one of the 5 toll projects that were approved in the state, and that project is still on track. Again, thanks to Tim and Bill and their negotiations in the House to keep the gap funding in the budget. So we're all keeping our fingers crossed now that we can get that project started and underway, hopefully to a point before next session when Tim's not with us anymore to fight for it. Hopefully that we can get that project far enough along that the gap funding would not be pulled in the next long session. So let's keep our fingers crossed on that one. Highway 12, a lot of maintenance going on there. The short bridge, you know, there was a lot of temporary bridge. There was a lot of controversy or conversation rather about whether that inlet was going to be filled in or whether it was going to be bridged. Fish and Wildlife decided that the bridge, that inlet needed to be bridged, and so it will be bridged. There's always comment from the western part of the state and central part of the state about how much money is spent on Highway 12, and I think you would all be surprised at how little amount of state money is spent compared to what's spent in other parts of the state.
Dan covered all the issues, so I won't go back and try to be redundant and cover those again. I will say though, Stan, if you think it's tough over on the Senate side trying to get 25 people to vote with you to do anything, come on the House side where I got to have 60 to vote with me to get anything done. It's really tough there. The partisan climate in Raleigh is becoming more and more like Washington, D.C. I hate to say that, but that is the truth. We're seeing more and more partisan division. I do wish we could put aside partisan politics and try to work together and do what's good for the people of this state, the people of this district, and just put people first and politics last. But it's just not been that way, and I'm afraid it will not be that way in this upcoming budget session. They pretty much have cut just about all they can cut. They're operating on about as bare a budget as they can operate, and having to make this additional $74 million in reversions is not something that they can afford to do without dramatically losing personnel or eliminating some of the programs in the school that are vital and necessary to our education system. Whereas if we do pass a modified budget this year, we can take the additional revenue that we have, about $250 million in additional revenue, and fund that $74 million so they don't have to make those reversions cuts or reversion paybacks back to the state. So if we don't pass a budget, that's the dilemma we are in, and there's nothing that says we have to pass a budget. That's the other thing. Everybody thinks we're going in short session because we've got to pass a budget this year. We already have a budget. We don't have to do anything. But hopefully we will make changes and modifications and use this additional revenue to make up some of the cuts in last year's budget. Because when you pass a budget, you do it for 2 years and you don't know what the revenue is going to be in the second year until you collect that revenue after April 15th. So you have to do your best estimate. I'll give you one more example. The gas tax. We voted to cap the gas tax in the House last year. Sent it to the Senate, but the Senate did not take it up. But in capping the gas tax, since that time, because we did not cap it, so it went in effect July 1 of last year. From July 1 of last year until March of this year, we collected an additional $120 million in taxes with that increase in the gas tax. Now in that Transportation Committee meeting I told you about just a while ago that I rolled out the ferry provision toll in there, we were looking at a section of highway in western North Carolina, a corridor there that needs to be built, and it's the section of I-40 there, where they always have the rock slides on and have so much maintenance to do on that. They're looking at making another roadway in there to have 2 alternates in there, so you don't have to depend on I-40 all the time. A 10-mile stretch of road with 3 tunnels in there, and they have to do the tunnels because some of it's environmental sensitive areas, and to meet the environmental demands and to try to avoid some lawsuits. There'll be 3 tunnels in that section of road. That 10-mile section of road will cost us $370 million to build. And I argued to the Transportation Committee folks, I said, look, my entire ferry budget is only $37 million. You can fund my ferry down here for 10 years off this same amount of money. Now, I'm not opposed to building this section of road because maybe you need it there. I'm not opposed to it, and I can vote for that. But you're going to have to vote with me on these ferries to make sure that we keep our ferries operational, we keep the tolls off these ferries, because these are our roads, just like that is your road in Western North Carolina. So it's all about trying to build relationships and working with one another. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't, and it's beginning to be harder and harder to do that because of the partisan divide, especially being this is an election year and you've got elections from the courthouse to the White House. So that's really going to make a divisive political wedge in the process this year. So, having said that, again, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to serve you as your representative in Raleigh. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a wonderful experience. I'll never forget all the wonderful people I've met as your representative. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be chosen by the people to serve. Not seeking re-election this year, so you'll have someone else there beginning next year. But thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to serve you, and I hope I've done at least some of the things that you would hope I would do and been able to accomplish on your behalf. Thank you.
And Representative Spear, I think I speak for everybody that we thank you for your service. Sorry to see you go, but hope that the next person can fill your shoes. Now I need to try and fill the shoes of, if anybody was here for Jim Gilreath's questioning of the local officials a couple weeks ago, I have some pretty big shoes to fill. Although I think he told a story about having forgotten his belt and wondering if the podium would hide his bungee cord that he used last year during the local elected officials forum. I think, given my height difference with Jim, I could wear just about anything I wanted to behind these podiums because they always make them for people who are much taller than I am. I'm going to start with Representative Spear. You've mentioned the issues with the majority versus minority in the House and Senate currently. Are there any important issues that you see won't be divisive between the two groups, that there will be some room to work and that the groups will work together?
Well, I think the gas tax will be capped. I'm not sure why the Senate did not take it up when we passed it over in the House side. I know it was just a little short session. We were over there for 2 or 3 days or whatever, so I don't know if timing had anything to do with it, but I do think there now has been an agreement or consensus between both the House leadership, the Senate leadership, and the governor about capping the gas tax. And I think one of the reasons for that is because there was an anticipated amount of revenue as a result of the increase in the gas tax. Well, and of course, we've got excellent staff in Raleigh and economists and do all the figuring and make these recommendations and things for us. But it's hard to project something like that or predict something like that. And what has happened is, because of the increase in gas tax, as well as the additional increase in the cost of living on just about anything else you can think of, in the grocery store or clothing, whatever the case may be, then we have collected less money than was anticipated in the increased gas tax. Matter of fact, we're actually going to have about $125 million less in revenue than what was estimated to have been collected as a result of the increase in gas tax. So I think as a result of that, when the cost went up, $4 a gallon, approaching $4 a gallon, people quit driving. There was less fuel being bought and purchased, so even though the price was up, consumption was down, and we actually collected less revenue than anticipated. So I think as a result of that, to try to keep a level on gas prices and try to keep those down and help the economy along, there's been an agreement that will be one of the things that you'll see some agreement on. Beyond that, I don't know of anything at all. Like I say, the sales tax is a point of contention. There's very, very different opinions about how to fund education and the role of education in the state. You've seen Senator Berger, maybe in the news recently, just unveiled a plan that he has of how education should look, and doing away with tenure for teachers and doing strictly a merit-based pay plan and putting more money in the remedial programs and the third grade. I mean, some major changes. I don't think you will see those taken up in the short session. I mean, that is too big a change with a short session to try to swallow. I think that's something that may get a little bit of talk. I don't know, but I just can't see it going in the short session. That's a long session issue. You're going to be there 5, 6, or 8 months to discuss major changes like that. But beyond that, I don't. I'm sorry to say, I don't see a whole lot of agreement.
Thank you, Representative Spear. Senator.
Well, you're correct. I mean, I do think that we are over-regulated. I think certainly marine fisheries is going out of their way to over-regulate. And CAMA was a great idea, I think, when it came into being. I'm not sure that it hasn't had lived its usefulness. It certainly that particular group that is controlling CAMA, again, has gotten to the point that they're unrealistic in some of their rules and regulations, and they tend to, and I'm not saying that it's easy, but they tend to make rules and say that it applies to everybody everywhere, and every body of water, every swamp. A lot of things just have different issues that cause them, or should cause them, to be treated in separate ways. Now, certainly one of the real hot issues around this part of the neck of the woods is marine fisheries regulates commercial fishing. And folks, you would be absolutely shocked if you went to Wanchese and met with some of those guys and saw some of the regulations that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, being how many people are on your boat, how many days they're fishing, what they're fishing for, what the equipment that they're using. They even have to call in with a report of how many fish they've caught, and that report has to be filed. And you might believe it's on a daily basis, but the amount of regulations now, the commercial fishing industry would like to be transferred to agriculture. They think that commercial fishermen probably fit with ag better than they do with marine fisheries, because they have a product to sell, as do marine fisheries. So there's still a lot of discussion on that one, but and we certainly haven't seen the end of it.
While we're on the question of fishing, the game fish bill related to red drum and trout has come back up again. Do you have any thoughts on that, Senator White?
Well, certainly that was another topic that was in the Marine Fisheries Subcommittee, and if you listen to statistics and you listen to them with an open mind, you would realize real quickly that the rockfish are totally recovered. So there seems to be no legitimate reason whatsoever to make the rockfish a game fish status. The red drum is almost totally recovered, and it's recovered a great deal over the last few years, and it appears that that's not an issue. Speckled trout, this area is about as far north as a speckled trout travels, and speckled trout are affected more by cold stints than anything else that affects the life of a speckled trout. The other statistic that would amaze you is that sport fishermen actually kill more fish than commercial fishing do. I mean, when you talk about, I forget the number, 400,000 licensed sportsmen, and when they pick up a trout and handle it and take the hook out of it and let it go, there's something like an 80% mortality rate, according to Senator Spear.
I think for the short session, the game fish bill is dead. I don't think we'll have to worry about it going forward from this point. Talked with the speaker about it numerous times and explained the economic impact this bill would have from coastal North Carolina, particularly our region here. And you know, the recreational people harvest about 80% of these fish already. It's all about one user group trying to. I mean, it's not about protecting the resources. It's about one user group having total access to these 3 species. So that once these species are declared game fish, then you can no longer harvest them. So it's not going to change anything as far as the mortality rate. If a commercial fisherman is fishing for another species and catches red drum or trout after they become game fish, then they simply take them out of the net and throw them away. So you still lose the fish. It's not about protecting the resource. You're still going to have bycatch. And once it becomes game fish, they will not be able to keep any of that bycatch. They simply throw them away. So the fish is actually still destroyed either way. But the problem it creates is that because it is now a game fish, then it cannot be bought or sold. So you won't be able to go into the restaurant and order speckled trout or red drum or whatever, rockfish, because you can't sell them at the dock. Number one, you can't catch them and keep them commercially. You can't sell them, you can't buy them, and you can't serve them in the restaurant. So the only people that gets to catch a speckled trout, a red drum, or rockfish is somebody with a hook and line, just a sport fisherman. So I don't think any resource should be totally dedicated to one user group. And the resource is there for everybody, and we just need to regulate it in a way that we protect the species and make sure we have abundant numbers of those species of fish for everybody to enjoy. And you got the consumer who may not, and certainly not a commercial fisherman, and maybe they're not even recreational fishermen. Why should they be denied an opportunity to consume that fish, to go to the fish market and buy that fish to bring back in and have a fish fry that afternoon, or those type things. So I don't think game fishing